So no further ado, Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you so much. Wow, thank you. Wow, thank you. Good evening. Wow, this is a deep gratitude to Rabbi Rosenberg for working on this program. Julie, you're there somewhere?
Right here.
There you are. She's very excited right now, I just want you to know. She worked very hard on this, and of course, this evening's program is in merit of her father's memory. May all those who knew him be elevated by his memory. It's a joy to be here with you. It wasn't easy getting out of Israel. People are plotting to get into Israel. There's a war, we need to get there. And our prayers are with the people of Israel right now. We are living in a remarkable time. We are living in a period when we can observe prophecy unfolding. Our sages of blessed memory tell us that while we can provide, we can supply commentary on the numinous passages in the Hebrew scriptures that describe the end of days, it'll only be that generation who live b'shas hagula, who lived during the time of the redemption, and we are. Only they will fully grasp the oracles of the prophets of blessed memory. And here we are. And I confess to you that when my great-grandfather, after whom I was named, was murdered by the Nazis in the spring of 1944, when virtually all of Hungarian Jewry was destroyed in a fairly short period of time. He was a very great man. He was a Hasidic rabbi. And I do not know why it is that God, in his perfect wisdom and understanding, chose me rather than him to observe this seder of events. And I chose that word very carefully because it's a series of events that happen one after the other. And I chose that word because, after all, that word is a name that identifies the most famous meal throughout the calendar. The Passover night is called a Seder. What an odd word to use to describe a redemption. But rather it's a Seder of events, 15 parts, and we name them and enumerate them. Why? Why are there 10 plagues? God couldn't have done it with one plague. Why did God need Pharaoh's permission? So people would wake up and do tshuva, and we are living in a striking time when people are being transformed. The people all of us were on October 6th, nearly 2 years ago, no longer exist. We will never be the same people again. The world has been transformed, and none of us could have imagined the events that would unfold. Moreover, there are many questions for which we do not have answers about that very dark day, October 7th. The order of magnitude of that day, we often think of tectonic events in Jewish history, 20th century, the Kishinev pogroms that took place in 1903. In April of that year, word went out that a Christian boy disappeared and he was found murdered, and the Jews were responsible for 2 days. Christians were slaughtering Jews. And it had an enormous impact on Jewry in the Pale of the settlement in the western part of the Russian Empire, an enormous impact. And Jews packed up and fled. We look at the play, the book, the film, Fiddler on the Roof as fiction, but it really isn't. It's just Fiddler on the Roof happened in thousands of little shtetl throughout the western part of the empire where Jews were permitted to live under Tsarist Russia. But the Kishinev pogroms in total, 49 Jews were murdered. We could think of the moment that ignited the Shoah, Kristallnacht, November 1938. 92 Jews murdered. October 7th. The information will come out, and I'm not looking forward to reading about it. But there is a mystery that I don't think any of us can answer, is why the anti-Semitism, the explosion of anti-Semitism after October 7th. How did that happen? Like, Tucker, where did you come from? Like, how did, like, Candace, like, why now? I mean, just so that you know, I'm not, after the Shoah, after European Jewry was destroyed, there was a window of time when the world kind of felt sorry for us for a few years. It's unlikely that the vote in the United Nations in November of 1947 would have gone 33-13 if it had not been for the destruction of European Jewry. What's happening? It is, I would posit to you, I am confident that every single one of you sitting here tonight, listening to my voice, shares this feeling of, we're just totally perplexed by this. How could Israel's intelligence completely collapse? Obviously, it was something that's inexplicable, but we know there was just a perfect storm of... But this part is very difficult, because it is really l'mayla min hateva, which means it's supernatural. And who is Israel's implacable enemy? A country who is identified in the Hebrew Bible by the prophets of Israel, that shares no border with the Jewish state. Persia is not filled with Arabs. I get it that Syria is an Arab country. They would like the Golan at the least, but they at least have there's something. But this is the way our prophets of blessed memory spoke about events that had not yet occurred. At the time, the Persian Empire was a friendly empire. It was a benign empire. And after all, it was the first king of that empire that told the Jews, it's time to go home. Cyrus, after all, looked at a prophecy in the book of Isaiah, and it had his name on it. And he said, it's time for the Jews to go home. And 42,360 Jews packed their bags in Bavel, in Babylon, and came to the land of Israel to begin the Second Commonwealth. We know their names. They're identified in the book of Ezra, chapter 2. Ezra, chapter 2, names every single family that made Aliyah after 50 years from the destruction of the first temple. Isn't that remarkable? And here we are, we're watching this. We're watching this event. And those Jews who did come to the land of Israel to make Aliyah, the initial wave, were predominantly not religious Jews. And Ezra and Nehemiah go out of their way to let us know that many of them didn't keep the Sabbath. Many of them took non-Jewish wives. It's in there. Why is it in there? After all, we know that the Ketuvim, the writings, that third section of the Hebrew Bible, is all about Mashiach. Now, why would the Bible, our scripture, go out of its way to tell us it'll be a Gentile king, not the most religious man in the world, who would who would tell the Jews, go to Jerusalem, and the bulk of the Jews that would go, not all, were not religious. Fine, it's very interesting historically. Barbara Tuchman could have written about this, and it would be intriguing. One of the finest historians of our time. But why is it scripture? What does that tell us about a messianic age? And after these Jews move to the land of Israel, a man rises up and seeks to destroy all the Jews. Why, oh, why is it in the Bible? And here we are living today in a remarkable time where I would submit that the middle has fallen out, meaning that I mentioned a moment ago that it is striking that there is this virulent form of anti-Semitism that is exploding in the mainstream, not the weirdos with pillowcases over their heads. I'm not, forget them. Not the oddballs, who want to march in Skokie. That was like the big thing in the late 70s. Some of you may remember it. When neo-Nazis wanted to march in a suburb of Chicago that was home to one of the largest Holocaust survivor communities. And the fellow, he dressed like Hitler. Anyone remember his name? Frank Collin. Neo-Nazi. And as it turned out, like today, we have these very odd people who are of Jewish extraction. As it turns out, Frank Collin lost his job because it was discovered that not only was his father Jewish, but his father was a survivor of Buchenwald. And we turn on the TV, and sometimes we find this circus of events on Piers Morgan of Jews who are our implacable enemies and advertise their Jewishness marshaling a reverse ad hominem fallacy and using their Jewish ancestry in order to bring the most serious charges against the Jewish nation today. But yet, we're living in a time when there's a great affection for the Jewish people. This is so striking. We are 1/4% of the world's population. Yet that's all they can talk about. We know it. Think of other peoples. The Chinese, the most successful race on the planet. 1 out of 3 people who occupy this earth of ours is Chinese. And you ask most people, well, what do you think of the Chinese people? And most people would go, we're not talking about their food now, right? We're talking about, they would go, I don't really have a very strong opinion about them. I think they're good folks. What do you think about the Koreans? Seem to be just fine. But I love when it comes to the Jews, if we do the thought experiment, the only rule is you had to say what you really think. People either just love the Jews or hate the Jews. And it kind of reminds me of Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, when the Almighty is blessing Abraham. He says to them, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. In your name, all the nations will be blessed. And you have to wonder yourself, well, what happens to people who just don't have a real strong opinion about them? Oh no, there won't be people like that. There won't be anyone in between. They might hide their views because it's socially unacceptable, or they may mask their feelings about the Jewish people by their feelings about the Jewish state, but everyone's got a very, very strong view about a nation 1/4% of the world's population. A country so tiny that when you look at a globe, the name of the country can't even fit inside the country. Israel has to be spelt out in the Mediterranean Sea. Syria, no problem. Big letters, fill it up. Egypt, no problem at all. Israel, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv were somehow all floating, these names are floating somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean. A country of 26,000 square kilometers, that's the whole deal. I remember giving the American ambassador, the 14th governor of the state of Arkansas, Ambassador Huckabee, a tour of Israel with a helicopter. And I was his guide for the day years ago. And we went up, and I said, okay, we were facing north. I said, look to your left. He said, that's the Mediterranean, isn't it? I said, you sure is. Now look to the right. That's the Jordan. I don't remember how high we were. Maybe it was 1,500 feet. From the river to the sea. That's the whole thing. There are driveways in Texas bigger than this. Our opponents are not just our physical opponents that want to destroy us, our nation, spiritual opponents, fundamentalist, evangelical, born-again Christians, Protestants. They want to bring you to the church. I don't mean the large, how are you, dear? So good to see you. Wow. So I do not mean, because I'm cognizant that I'm in San Diego, where there's a very large, prestigious Roman Catholic community here in the city. Okay? The Roman Catholics you will meet in San Diego, for the most part, are not interested in converting Jews to Christianity. The liberal Protestants, there are many of them here in this city, Episcopalians, Methodists. These people, too, are not interested in converting you to Christianity. San Diego is loaded with messianic congregations, churches that are designed to appear as though they're synagogues. Fundamentalist Southern Baptist churches in this city. There are in the United States more than 1,000 missions to the Jews that are dedicated to bring each and every one of you to the cross. Hundreds of millions of dollars are spent annually to bring each and every one of you to convert to Christianity. They've got a message for you, sir. You need to believe in Jesus. And if you believe in him, you're saved. And if you don't, you're damned. Mark chapter 16, verse 16. There's no salvation outside of the cross. That's their message. These fundamentalist Christians, like the Assemblies of God, that's the fastest growing Protestant denomination in the United States, not the largest. Southern Baptists take that prize. Southern Baptist Convention, anyone know what they're about? Like, what does that mean, Southern Baptist? Like a Baptist, and if you have a suntan as a Southern, what does this mean? The whole Southern Baptist Church was born out of hatred and racism. In the 19th century, the Baptist Church declared that if you owned slaves, you could not lead a church. Seemed reasonable. But there were a lot of folks who wanted a church, and they wanted a slave. So, in Augusta, Georgia, in the early 1840s, the Southern Baptist Convention was created so that slavery can continue and still have a church in good standing. The whole thing is born out of racism. They're not the only ones who are racist in the 19th century, but their raison d'être was that. That's why they were created. It blows my mind away to see African Americans going into a Southern Baptist church. I like plots. I remember once driving to Newark, New Jersey, so Newark Airport. So to get to Newark Airport is very easy because you can imagine, it's northern New Jersey, and there you can take the Garden State Parkway, you can take the Turnpike, and it all. Is this too complicated for the Californians? No. But sometimes there's traffic. I know you're from California, you don't know what traffic is, but there's such a thing as traffic. I remember the Sunday I had to catch a flight, and the Garden State Parkway, I was going from north to south. I think it's exit 142. You get off the parkway, you have to get onto 78th and take a little turn there like this, and you get how you normally would get to the airport. But the parkway was packed. There was a parking lot. But I knew the trick, and that is you get off at exit 143B. I believe I got that right. And then you drive in the Newark area, and you drive on the streets, and you can go pretty fast. And I'll never forget this. So I get off Garden State because it was a nightmare. I had to catch this flight. It's a horrible feeling. And I'm just waiting there at a light, and then I look to my right, and I'm going, Southern Baptist Church. It was a Sunday morning, and there were black women dressed to the nines in their Sunday best. I mean, just most beautiful. And I just wanted to park in my car and go, do you understand what you're doing going into a building like that? I couldn't get him. But these people, here it's bad. In Israel, it's a nightmare. In Israel, it's a nightmare because these are Israel's best friends. So they're highly integrated into Israeli society, very close to the government. It's a stage 4 cancer in Israel. For those who don't know, there is no such thing as stage 5. It's very, very serious in Southern California because here you have home to essentially the second largest Jewish community in the United States, Southern California. And you have many evangelicals in Southern California. It's not just here, but in Orange County. I don't need to tell you, you after all live here. And these people have a message for you. If you believe in Jesus, you're saved, and if you don't, you're going to hell. There is no hope for you. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 8 describes what will happen to those who don't accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. When the French Crusaders came into Jerusalem in 1099, in July of that year, they took all the Jews living in Yerushalayim, they put them into a synagogue, locked the doors from the outside, and recited John chapter 15, verse 6, which describes how those who don't believe in Jesus, they will be burnt alive with wood, like packages of wood. The claim of Jews for Jesus, which is right here in your neighborhood, the claim of Chosen People Ministries, which is right here in your neighborhood, is very simple. If you believe in Jesus, you're saved, and if you don't, you're damned, you're going to hell. There is no hope for you. I remember I was speaking in Brooklyn. Looks very much like, no it doesn't, looks nothing. It was a nice big crowd in the audience. And after the lecture, so people frequently come over to me, after the lecture, you'll see. And they ask questions, right? And I saw there was a crowd of people around me, and I'm answering people's questions, and I could see in the corner of my eye was my Rebbe from 5th grade, Rabbi Franco, was standing there. His beard was grayer. I must have been, when I was a student, maybe what was I, 10 years old? And he was just watching this whole spectacle. And finally, he made his way closer to me, and when our eyes locked, he said, you know, Tovia, if you would have known your Chumash like you know the New Testament, you would have been just fine. In 1959, Israel, the Mossad discovered where the architect of the Holocaust was hiding in Argentina, and it sent its agents to capture Adolf Eichmann. I met one of the men who grabbed him. In fact, he wrote a book called Eichmann in My Hands. His name is Peter Malkin. Spent good time with him. He captured him along with others, and Israel managed to bring him out of Argentina. It was I mean, Israel's and Argentina relations between the two countries did not heal for decades because of that. But he was put on trial for crimes against humanity. It was a trial that seized the world. It was broadcast, and the prosecutor in the case, his name, anybody? Gideon Hausner, Justice in Jerusalem, a very important book. Eichmann is convicted of his unimaginable crimes and sentenced to be executed of May in 1962. 2 days before his execution, he requests a Dutch confessor. And he accepts Jesus as his Lord and Savior 2 days before his execution on May 31st, 1962. In Christian theology, if he genuinely converted to Christianity, so then he went to heaven, and those that he murdered, after all, they went to hell. This is what's called a fantastic claim. And it behooves us, I think, to ask a fundamental question. Throughout the entire corpus of the Hebrew Bible, how many times do we find this mitzvah, this commandment? I mean, in Christian terms, everything comes to that. I am sure there are many of you sitting in this room who were Christians at one time. So you know, I'm not straw-manning this. Throughout the entire Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew Scriptures, incidentally, is enormous. It's much bigger than Lahavdil, the New Testament. The Hebrew Bible is nearly 24,000 passages. It's made up of 306,757 words. It's enormous. Throughout the entire corpus of Tanakh, how many times does it say that when Mashiach comes, make sure that you accept him and you don't reject him? Incidentally, why is that a valid question? Before we address that, I mean, for the church, that's everything. The church, if you're a Christian, you're saved. If you speak to people who are Christians and you left it, the first thing they're going to tell you is you're going to hell. Am I making this up? Because there are a lot of people in the audience are going, Rabbi, you're telling the truth. Okay, so it's very important. This is terrified of this. It's intriguing, incidentally, that Tanakh never threatens hell. Never. Why? It's really, of all the world religions, the afterlife is never used as a threat. It doesn't mean there isn't an afterlife. There is, but it's never the threat. Why not? Because it's unfalsifiable. If you're making up a religion, you definitely want to get heaven and hell in there, and a lot. Why? Because you can't test it. What are you going to do? Go to Home Depot, hit the cemetery, spend 2 hours digging and say, hey, Charlie, so what happened? If you are really God and you're inspiring a prophet, why would you talk about heaven and hell? That doesn't make sense. If you're God, that means you control the weather. So you can say, well, here's what's going to happen. If you turn away from me, it's just going to stop raining. And if it stops raining, your animals will have nothing to eat, and neither will you. And your wives will not have children. When you go to war, your enemies will defeat you. Now, if you're not God, you definitely do not want to make those threats. Why? Because you can't control the weather, you can't control history. You can't control military outcomes. So only the God of Israel would threat. There are threats in the Hebrew Bible, but it's never heaven and hell. Never. But why would a Christian agree that the most important question to ask is, throughout the entire Jewish Bible, how often does it say that when the Messiah comes, make sure that you accept him and you don't reject him? How often does it say that? Why would a Christian concede that that's the fundamental question to ask? Can anyone tell me? What you're about to hear is not politically correct. But when you want to know the truth, sometimes, right? Something, let's say, chas v'chalila, something you're not feeling well, you wake up, something bothering you, something pulling, schlepping, you're not feeling right. Person goes to the doctor. You hope not, you hope it goes away, but let's say it persists, so you go. You don't want to go, but you go. Now, in truth, when a person goes to a doctor, there are things that go on in a doctor's office that if it go on anywhere else, you call the police immediately. You want me to do what? I don't know. We have in Israel have the tables and they have a piece of paper like a deli paper. They have a hair also. You feel like a pastrami sandwich in a kugel over there. Why would you put yourself through that? Because you hope that the man or the girl, this lady, knows what she's doing, and she'll figure out you just need this little pill, you just want, and you go home. But just, I want to know the truth, because it's really important. All Christians concede that the Hebrew Bible can be true and the Christian Bible false. That's not politically correct, but it's true. The Christian Bible, however, cannot be true and the Jewish Bible false. Why not? Because the Christian Bible explicitly states that it's basing itself on the Jewish scriptures, 2 Timothy 3:16, as an example. So therefore, it's fair to ask the question, throughout the entire Jewish scripture, throughout Tanakh, how frequently does it say that when Mashiach comes, now Mashiach is in Tanakh, there are hundreds of messianic passages in the Hebrew Bible, how frequently do we find the mitzvah, this commandment, that when Mashiach comes, make sure that you accept him and you don't reject him? Okay, anybody? Zero, correct. It's not there. Isn't that interesting? You know the prohibition against eating cockroaches? Sorry, you guys. There are 6 prohibitions against it. It doesn't literally say cockroaches, but just these creepy things. I nearly said cross-dressing, and then I realized, wait, it's 2025. We have to dump that. But it is in there. Go ahead. I got paid. I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. But it's the prohibition against being unkind to the convert 21 times. You know, if a person is kind to a convert, you're makayim, you fulfill 21 mitzvahs in the Torah. It's not there. There's not one passage anywhere in the Hebrew Bible that says what Jesus says is everything. That when the Messiah comes, make sure you accept him, you don't reject him. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Why? Because it's not of God, it's of man. In fact, Christianity is man's failed effort to create God in his image. Conversely, Judaism is God's successful endeavor in creating man in his image. Exactly the opposite. That's why Jesus looks great. Why does he look terrific? If you and I were standing in CVS, right, and I say to you, hey, don't turn around right now, but the guy behind us looks exactly like Jesus. And then, of course, all the Jews go, all right. What are you expecting to see there? There'll be a fellow, he's 6 feet tall, perfect BMI, hair to die for, not a single split end, perfect beard. He looks terrific. You know what you're going to look at. He's not going to be a short, fat, bald yenta with a mustache. It's not going to happen. It's just, we know it. It doesn't matter. It's just, we know what he's going to look like. He's going to look like he's from GQ. Why? Because if man would attempt to create God in his image, that's what we would want. We'd want our God to look just like that. That's what it is. It's idolatry. I want to ask you a question, Kinderlach. I want to ask you a question, my dear brothers and sisters. Why, in fact, doesn't it say anywhere in the Jewish Bible that when the Messiah comes, make sure that you accept him and don't reject him. If we can, for a moment, a thought experiment, let's set Christianity outside for a moment. We don't need it. But I would think that when the Mashiach comes, we appear to be very, very close now to that moment. I would think that when it occurs, that it really would be a very good idea to accept him, and it would be the motherload of bad ideas to reject him. So why isn't there anywhere in the Hebrew Bible that says that when the Mashiach comes, make sure that you accept him? Think. Yes, sir. Bingo. Because it's built in, it's sort of circular. The most important messianic prophecy in Tanakh is that everyone will know the truth. The knowledge of God will cover the world as the water covers the sea. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 14. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 9. 10 Gentiles of different languages will grab the shirt of a Jew and say, Nelcha imochem, ki shamanu Elohim imochem. Let us go with you, because we have heard that God is with you. In fact, if we're wrong about the Trinity and the Theotokos, why would they be coming to us? The non-Jews will come to the Jews and say, now we know that you had the truth all along. Why would you convert out? The clear point is that the Mashiach himself will rebuke the nations. He will judge among the peoples, and the nations will follow him. Ki mitzion teitei Torah u'devar Hashem Yerushalayim. You know, that prophecy that when the Messiah, there's very little about Mashiach in Tanakh. There are hundreds of passages in the Hebrew Bible that are messianic, about the Messianic age. Very few of them are about the Messiah himself. There are very few. And none of them he's doing miracles. None of them. He's not a miracle person. But Isaiah tells us that he will rebuke the nations and he will judge among the peoples, and they will take their swords and spears and turn them into plowshares and pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn of war anymore. Isaiah 2, verse 3 and 4. Even the United Nations, I'm not a big fan. But the United Nations on 1st Avenue and 42nd Street, it's chiseled into a wall. In the Christian Bible, not there. He didn't do it. Now, Ki mitzion teitei Torah u'devar Hashem Yerushalayim, for out of Zion will call the law. That, as you can imagine, the United Nations didn't want to put that in there. That's definitely not going to go with the UN, right? The answer is that everyone will know the truth. V'hoya Hashem lemelcha kol haaretz bayomahu. Yeah, right? Everyone knows it. Because that's a signal to fold up your talus. Everyone knows that. Isaiah chapter 14. Everyone will know that there's one God of Israel. Everyone will know the truth. It would be silly. That means if people don't think he's a Messiah, that means he isn't. You see? It's really kind of built in there. And war will come to an end. According to the State Department, there are currently 27 wars that are raging in the world. You're very familiar with probably 2, maybe 3 of them. One of them for sure, everyone knows about. There's a very deadly war going on in Ukraine and Russia, where between 5 and 10,000 people are killed weekly. That somehow, is not that interesting. And in Nigeria, there's a civil war which almost no one's ever heard of. That will all come to an end. If there are rockets and missiles that means the Mashiach is not yet here. The ingathering, the exiles. We are living a time, ladies and gentlemen, where more than half of the known Jews in the world are living in Eretz Israel. That had not been the case since the days of Hezekiah. With the language, Lashon HaKodesh, Lashon Yehudis, that's in Tanakh, the Jewish language. Isaiah chapter 36, verse 11. is spoken in Eretz Yisrael. In the Second Temple, conversational language was Aramaic, not Hebrew. People prayed in Hebrew. Of course, they read Tanakh in Hebrew, but their conversation was Aramaic. You'd have to go back to First Temple times. Our people are coming home. It's time to go home. And this isn't it. There are so many mitzvahs that you can perform in the land of Israel. You cannot perform here. It's time. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing things to chase Jews out of places where they were very comfortable. And people are starting to worry and starting to realize that. I think in Belgium, our time is running out. I think in England, time is running out. Lord only knows what's about to happen in New York City. Time may be running out. The building of a temple in Jerusalem. From Ezekiel chapter 41 through 47, we have the unused blueprints of the third Messianic temple. All the tribes will be restored. All 12 will be present. God tells Ezekiel, take 2 rods, one of them Judah, the other Ephraim. They'll become one in your hand. Israel can never disappear. He saw a valley of dry bones, and God asked him, can these bones live? And Ezekiel was smart enough to say, only you know, Lord. And they rose, and this is the people of Israel. Covenant Israel cannot disappear. No individual has that guarantee. The work we're doing in outreach is not to make sure that the Jews don't disappear. We can't disappear. We don't want you to give up your seat on the bus. These events will be preceded by the coming of Elijah the prophet. Eliyahu HaNavi were told this at the very end of the last book of the prophets. Ladies and gentlemen, we're living in a remarkable time. We're living in a time where soon all the nations will speak B'Sofa Brura, in a pure speech. A time when there'll be peace. A time when all the nations will bend their knees and their tongues will praise only the God of Israel and no one else. And let us hope that we merit to see the coming of the true Mashiach, B'mheira b'yameinu, very, very quickly in our time. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Shalom. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל